Hello, I think you can hear me.
Yes, madam.
Dhanushi, can you hear me?
Yes, madam, I can hear well. Hello? Madam, I can hear well.
Can you hear me, Dhanushi?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear well.
Okay. Okay, we can start now. Last week, we did this slide. In this case, through these slides, I wanted to explain you how to identify an employment income from the income any taxpayer received. So if they have received an income from employment, business or investment, you should know how to determine whether this income should be categorized under employment income, business income or an investment income. So now we can move to the next slide. If you have questions, you can ask. So after that, I'm going to move to this slide. So in this slide, I'm going to tell you about the income types of income that we have to include when we are calculating the employment income. So section 5 is provided for the employment income. If you have an act, you can read it. So in the act, we have section 5 for employment income, and section 5(1) is for the introduction of that employment income. So in that section, it says, an individual's income from an employment for a year of assessment shall be the individual's gains and profits from the employment for that year of assessment. That means it is an introduction for the employment income. So if we receive any income in respect of the employment, so that kind of all income should be categorized under employment income. Subsection 2 of section 5 provided for the income that we have to include when we are calculating the employment income. So these are the types of income that we can categorize under employment income. If we receive this kind of income, definitely we should include that when we are calculating the employment income. First one is salary, wages, leave pay, OT, fees, pensions, commissions, gratuities, bonuses, and other similar payments. Other similar payments means any income received from our employer should be categorized under this type of income. And the next one is personal allowance. That includes cost of living, subsistence, rent allowance, entertainment allowance, traveling allowance, fuel allowance, like that. That means all allowances, if we received in respect of the employment, all allowances we receive from our employer, that income is an employment part of the employment income. So if it is an allowance means that income should be received in respect of our personal requirements. That means an allowance is an amount paid to an employee for use by the employee in meeting particular expenses, but with no requirement for the employee to vouch that the amount has been expended for the stated purposes. That means vouchers should not be required, and it is not necessary to explain how we expend that amount that we have received from our employer. It can be an allowance. So we receive cost of living, we receive a rent allowance, entertainment allowance, or traveling allowances, but it is not necessary to submit vouchers. So bills to prove the expenditure. The next one is discharge or reimbursement of expenses incurred by the individual or an associate of the individual. That means discharge or reimbursement of expenses. That means if we can expend, and after that expenditure, after making that expenditure, what we have to do is we have to collect the bills, and we can submit that bills to the employer. Then that employer will give us the money for that expenditure. That is the amount, that is the meaning of that reimbursement. So if we receive that kind of reimbursement, that is also part of the employment income. But we have to exclude some reimbursements. That reimbursements are if we incur some expenses in respect of the employee, that means on behalf of the employee, if that employee reimburses that expenses, that is not a part of the employment income, because that income, that expenditure was incurred on behalf of the employer. That is not our personal benefit. That is an expenditure we incurred on behalf of the employer. If we receive that kind of reimbursement, it is not a part of the income. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි සමහරවිට අදාළ කම්පැනි එක වෙනුවෙන් අපි වේදමක් දරනවා. කම්පැනි එක වෙනුවෙන් එහෙමත් නැත්නම් පොඩි ආයතනයක් නම් ඒ ආයතනයේ වේදම වෙනුවෙන් අපි යම් වේදමක් දරනවා. ඒ වේදම අපේ employer reimburse කරොත් that is not a part of an employment income. That is just a reimbursement of the expenditure we incurred on behalf of the employer. If that employer reimburses an expenses that we incurred for our personal matter, that payment, that reimbursement can be categorized under employment income. This is an example for that. Mr. Roshan received 100,000 per month from his employer to cover his rent expenses. Rent expenses means a personal expenditure. That means we pay rent for our houses, for a vehicle, but that is our personal expenditure. So if that employer reimburses that kind of expenditure, that is a benefit for us. Additionally, he incurred expenses on behalf of business clients. He would be reimbursed by his employer upon submission of receipts to substantiate the expenditure. That means that kind of expenditure are incurred on behalf of the employer. Therefore, what we have to do, we have to submit relevant bills, and he will pay for that, but it is for the expenditure for the employer. So, Mr. Roshan's housing allowance 100,000 is taxable under section 2(5) subsection 2(b) because it is a personal allowance. So, now I think you can understand what I have explained. However, Mr. Roshan's expense reimbursements are excluded under section 5(3)(b) because those expenses are incurred on behalf of business clients. That means it was incurred on behalf of the employer. Because of that, it is not a part of the employment income. Then the next one is individual's agreement to conditions of employment. Sometimes we receive some income from the employment for the conditions. So if that kind of expenditure also a part of the employment income. For an example, Mr. Saman. There is a person that called Mr. Saman. He currently works in a government institution in Kandy. That means he is currently working in an institution. Either it can be government or a private company. He has been offered a position at a company in Colombo. That means he is working in one place, but from another place, they request. He offered a position from that another institution, which has proposed to compensate him with 10 million. That means they offer 10 million to Mr. Saman for the position in that company. So he has to එතන මොකද government institution එකෙන් අයින් වෙන්න ඕනේ. අයින් වෙලා ඉන්න කියලා තමයි මෙයාට මේ 10 million දෙන්නේ. For the pension rights he would forfeit by leaving the government. That means they ask that Mr. Saman to leave from the government institution and join with them. For that purpose, they are going to offer 10 million. So that is the condition. Condition is to leave from the government institution. For that condition, they pay 10 million. So that is also a part of the employment income. Actually, in this case, that person is not employee, not the employee, he is not an employee of that company. Actually, that is a prospective employment. For that prospective employment, if he received that 10 million, that is also a part of the employment income. The next one is redundancy or loss or termination of employment. That means if we are leaving from the employment, if they terminate our employment, if we are going to leave from our company or institution, at that time we receive a lot of income. So that income also a part of the employment income. Terminal benefits also a part of the employment income. Then the retirement contributions made to a retirement fund. That means retirement contributions made to a retirement fund on behalf of the employee and retirement payments received in respect of the employment. Two types of income is there. So one is contributions made to a retirement fund. Contributions made to a retirement fund on behalf of the employee means the employer make contributions on behalf of the employee to a retirement fund. That is one type of payment, and another payment is retirement payments received in respect of the employment. That means when we are retiring, the employer pay us retirement payments. So that is also a part of the employment income. And the retirement contributions made by the employer on behalf of the employee also a part of the employment income. Then the next one is payments or transfers to another person for the benefit of the individual or an associate person of the individual. Associate persons means mother, father, family members, aunt, uncle, niece, all are family members. So associates means mainly our family members, father, mother, children, like that. So we have given a definition under section 196 for the associate persons. So if we receive some amount, if we receive some benefit from another person or for us or our associate persons, since we are an employee of that employment under employer, that kind of income also a part of the employment income. For an example, if the company give a gift to my daughter, because I am an employee of that employer under that employer, that is that kind of gift my daughter received since I am an employee of that organization. Therefore, that income also a part of my employment income, even though that income is not received by me. It received by my daughter, but my daughter received that income on behalf of me because I am an employee of that organization. Therefore, that kind of income also a part of the employment income. The next one is in that case, we have to consider the fair market value of that benefit, because sometimes we receive some gifts, some other kind of benefits. If we cannot value that in cash, then we have to consider the fair market value for that purpose. The next one is any non-cash receipt by an individual that relieves that individual of a personal expense is also a benefit. The non-cash benefit receipts does not need to be something that the individual wants or uses. The phase by virtue of the individual's employment is designed to be broad in its application. It includes benefits received not from employer, but indirectly through a third party. That means, for an example, Mr. Silva is an executive officer of Company X. As part of his remuneration package, Company X provides Mr. Silva with the car and the service of a driver and a gardener. Mr. Silva must include these benefits in calculating his income from employment and valued under Section 27. That means if we have to consider not only the cash amounts we receive from our employer, all cash benefits as well, non-cash benefit should be considered for the employment income. For the valuation of that non-cash benefit, we have given a specific section, that is Section 27. So under Section 27, we value the non-cash benefits for the purpose of income tax. So if we receive cash benefits as well, non-cash benefits, both are considered under employment income. The next one is other payments, including gifts received in respect of the employment. So for the term gift, we have an interpretation under Section 195. So gift means a transfer without consideration. If we receive a gift in respect of the employment, that income, that gift, that value of that gift should be categorized under employment income. එතකොට employment එකේ යෙදීම නිසා තමයි gift එක හම්බෙන්නේ. නිකන් හම්බෙන gift එකක් නෙවෙයි, employees ලට හැමෝටමයි දෙන gift එකක් නම් it is not on behalf because we are an employee. It is a general gift. That kind of gift should not be categorized under employment income. If we receive a gift, since we are an employee of that organization, that kind of gift should be categorized under employment income. The next item we have to categorize, we have to consider for the employment income is share options. Share options means sometimes our employer give us some shares. They allot some shares for us. So the market value of that shares we have to consider for the employment income. That means when they can give us a share option plan, but when we are considering that plan, when we are taking that opportunity, then at that time we have to consider that income, that share value as a benefit for the employment income. That means they give share option plans. අපිට කියනෝනේ company අපේ company එකේ shares අපි ඔයගලන්ට දෙනවා කියලා. That is the share option plan. They can offer share option plans, but not the time they are offering, but the time we allotted that shares is to be considered for the benefit. For the we should consider that time as the value we received at that time under the employment income. The option එක දෙන වෙලාවට නෙමෙයි අපි සලකන්න ඕනේ. මේ option එක අපි පාවිච්චි කරන වෙලාවට. එතකොට option එකක් අද දෙන්න පුළුවන්, but after 1 or 2 years we can take that opportunity. So at that time we have to consider the market value of that shares as a benefit for the employment income. Okay. If you have questions, you can ask now. So these are the income we have to consider when we are calculating the employment income. So these are the income we receive in cash. In most cases, we receive cash or market. Sometimes we have to consider market value of that benefit. So all these income should be categorized under employment income. Not only the income we receive in cash or we consider the market value of the benefit. Sometimes we receive non-cash benefits. Not only the non-cash benefits, some allowances also there. So we have issued a specific circular for the calculation of non-cash benefits for the employment income, because sometimes we receive free housing benefit, we receive free transport vehicles for the transportation. For that kind of income, we should have a value for the ascertainment of for the calculation of the tax. So we need a value. We should have a specific value for the inclusion of the employment income. For that purpose, we have issued a circular. The circular is SCC/2023/E/02. So for this circular, the title of the circular is Quantification of Certain Amounts for Benefits in Calculating Employment Income. So in addition to that income I have explained earlier, if we receive this kind of income, so the values are provided under this circular should be considered for the employment income. Now we can move from one by one. So this is the circular. If you have already make printouts, you can follow that document. If you don't have, you can follow this document. Yes, there's a chat. Madam, can employers' contribution to concessionary season tickets consider as employment income? Contribution to concessionary season tickets. Season ticket. So it is season ticket means if they give us an allowance, an amount, so that kind of income should be categorized under employment income. So for the season tickets, how much, if it is material, I think we have to consider. If it is not material, it is not necessary to include. If we have given group transport, we do not consider it because it is very difficult to ascertain the value for a person. Therefore, we do not consider the benefit for the group transport. But if they have contribute for a season ticket, we can consider it because all the benefits we receive from our employer should be a part of the employment income. So this is the circular we have already issued. So we called it quantification of certain amounts for benefits in calculating employment income. So first one of this circular is value of company shares awarded by employer. As I have already explained, when they are granting options, at that time we do not consider for the market, we do not consider for the employment income. But when we are when they are allocating shares to us, at that time, at that period, at that time, we consider that income for the benefit as a benefit for the employment income. The next one given under this circular is value of benefits from any residence provided by the employer. That means sometimes we receive housing benefits. Housing benefits අපිට quarters දෙන්න පුළුවන්, නිකන් ගෙයක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. If we have received that kind of residence benefit, we have to include amount specified in this circular to the employment income. So for that purpose, we should know the salary of the employee, because the amount is based on their salary. So we have in the first column we have given the types of the house. So if that is in the rated area where the rates are collected by local authorities, that means අපි කියන්නේ වරිපනමයි කරන ප්‍රදේශ. So that kind of places. So if that house is situated in the rated area, so the amount we have to consider as housing benefit is 12.5% of the salary of the respective employee for the relevant month. So this amount is for the month. For the consideration of 12 months period, that means for the year of assessment, we have to multiply this amount by 12. So this amount is for the month, only for the month. So this is the value we have to consider for the monthly housing benefit. So if that house is situated in unrated area, then we have to multiply our salary by 10% to calculate the value of housing benefit. If it is a estate bungalow, then 7.5% of salary of the respective employees for the month. So this is the value we have to consider as our housing benefit. For the purpose of this calculation, we have interpreted the term salary. So what is the meaning of salary? Because that salary, that term is very important. We can consider salary means basic salary or gross salary, or there are a lot of types of salaries. So in this case, for this purpose, the salary means the amount required to be considered for the deduction of WNOP. That means WNOP means Widows and Orphans Pension Scheme or Provident Fund. Then WNOP තියෙන government pension තියෙන අයටනේ. එතකොට එහෙම අයට නම් මේකට සලකන්නේ මොකක්ද? Basic salary. So here for this purpose we consider basic salary. We have not given the term basic salary because basic salary can be vary from an institution to institution. Because of that, we have given this term. That means the salary we consider for the deduction of WNOP or Provident Fund for other cases. Provident Fund. For other cases, salary means gains and profits from employment received in cash to such employee from relevant employment. That means we have to consider the salary that is considered for the deduction of WNOP or Provident Fund. If it is a private company, we can consider Provident Fund. If it is a government institution, we can consider WNOP. The value we consider for the WNOP or Provident Fund is the salary we have to consider for the calculation of this housing benefit. And there are some conditions. If the cost, where the cost incurred by the employer or market value of the place of residence exceeds the value specified above. What kind of situation? Sometimes after multiplying this 12.5% or 10%, after multiplying that amount from the salary, sometimes the value is very higher than the actual market value of that house. If that kind of situations are there, then we have to consider the lower amount of or lower value of such cost or market value of such place of residence. මේක තේරෙනවද දන්නේ? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි දැන් rated area එකක නම් salary එකෙන් 12මාරයි ගන්නෙ. If it is an unrated area, 10% of the salary. If it is a state bungalow, 7.5% of the salary. But sometimes if it is very rural area, සමහර වෙලාවට මෙතන value එක salary එක ගොඩාක් high කෙනෙකුගේ වුණොත් මේ salary එක ගොඩාක් high කෙනාගේ 12.5% means very huge amount. But sometimes their sometimes their actual value pay for the house may be very lower amount than that calculated amount. If that kind of situations, what we have to consider is the lower value should be considered as a housing benefit. There are a lot of questions. One is, Madam, if we receive allowances for foreign traveling for business tour. Yes, we will discuss it later. I have that that type of income in this circular. So at that time we can discuss it. So if we receive a housing benefit, we have to calculate using these 12.5, 10% or 7.5 for the calculation of housing benefit. එතකොට අර මං කිව්වගේ ඈත පළාතක වෙන්න පුළුවන් සමහරවිට සැලරි එක ගොඩාක් හයි කෙනෙකුගේ 12.5% කියලා කියන්නේ ගොඩාක් ලොකු වැලියු එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අපි actually ගෙවන house එකට ගෙවන rent එක මේ calculation එක කියන්නේ 12.5 හෝ 10 හෝ 7.5 ට වඩා අඩු ගාණක් වුණොත් අපි යාට වැඩි ගාණක් benefit එක විදිහට සලකන එක වැරදි. Because of that, therefore, we consider lower value of such cost or market value. එතකොට ඒ දෙකෙන් lower value එක තමයි අපි benefit එකට ගන්න. Where the employer, this is the other condition when we are calculating the housing benefit. If the employer reimburses any expense incurred by the employee or pays any amount to the employee as a monthly allowance connected with the house or apartment occupied by the employee, the value of benefit shall be the actual expense reimbursed or allowance paid. That means now we know the value for this house. Because of that, we consider the value the employer reimbursed or the allowance paid by the employer. You can හරියටම අපි දැන් ගානක් දන්නවනේ. In the earlier case, we don't know the value. Because of that, we consider 12.5%, 10% or 7.5% of their salary. Now, in this case, we know the actual value we pay for that house. That means the employer can reimburse the housing benefit, reimburse the expenditure incurred by the employee, or the expenses can be paid by the employee. Employer reimburses in expenses incurred by the employee or pays an amount to the employee. That means he can pay any amount to the employee to be paid to the landlord. So that amount should be considered as an allowance for the housing as a housing benefit. And the next condition is, if any amount is deducted from the employee's salary, that means after calculation of after considering the amount, the employer can collect some amount from the employee for providing a place of residence or by way of rent. The employment benefit should be the benefit specified under 2A or C above, less the amount deducted from the employee's salary. එතකොට ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට අපි A කියන්නේ මෙන්න මෙතන මේ අවස්ථාව මේ උඩින්ම කතා කරපු. එතකොට මේ අවස්ථාවල වලදී අපි ගණනය කරපු ඒ amount එකෙන් අපිට පුළුවන් අඩු කරගන්න employee ගෙන් ගන්න එකතු කරගන්න ගාන. Sometimes we collect some amount, we deduct some part from the employee for as a rent. එතකොට rent එකෙන් කොටසක් employer කපා ගන්නවා. So the amount we have to consider for the employment is the amount we considered for the considered as a benefit minus the amount we collect from the employee. So in the difference between these two should be considered as an house as a housing benefit. The next one is value of the benefit for traveling and transport. So now, I think most of you receive vehicle benefit or fuel allowance or fuel benefit from your employer. If you receive that kind of benefit, that amount should be calculated like this. So we have given the calculation method in the circular. First one is for the housing benefit. So this calculation is for the uh, transport or vehicle benefit. So if we are given a vehicle, a driver, provide a driver, or if we are given fuel, not the fuel allowance, not the vehicle allowance, but a vehicle, not the fuel allowance, but fuel. Then we can consider these three amounts as our vehicle benefit. These are vehicle benefits. So if we receive a vehicle from our employer, we consider only 20,000. If we have given a vehicle only, then 20,000. If we are given vehicle plus driver, then 20,000 plus 10,000. If we are given vehicle plus driver plus fuel, then 20,000 plus 10,000 plus 20,000. That means 50,000 to be considered as a vehicle benefit. And there are a lot of other conditions. If that benefit is received by if that benefit is received by a government officer means there is a special circular issued by the government or a directive or a regulation issued on behalf of the government. Under that circular, it has mentioned who are the employees entitled for this benefit. If we have that kind of employees, that employees vehicle benefit is 25% of the benefit they receive. That is the amount we consider for the taxation. That means 75% of that benefit is considered as incurred in respect of the official work, and 25% is for the personal matter. That is why we consider 25% as a personal benefit. මොකද official දෙයක් වෙනුවෙන් අපි දරන වේදම අපිට tax කරන්න බෑ. Because of that, we consider only 25%. That is the amount, that is the quantified amount by the Commissioner General for the purpose of vehicle benefit. So 25% of the cost incurred by the employer, the value of the benefit shall be 25% of the cost incurred by the employer for the payment of an amount to the employee for using a vehicle owned or rented by that employee. That means sometimes that person has his own vehicle, or if he rented out that vehicle, any vehicle he used for the transportation, that vehicle benefit is 25%. We only tax 25%, but this concession is applicable only to the government employees, mainly government employees. I have mentioned about the government employees, because under this circular, most of the employees are government employees. That is why I have mentioned that term. The next one is where any employee is required to be provided with a vehicle and entitled to a payment for fuel under any circular. That means in this case, In this case, that employer should provide a vehicle or pay an amount in lieu of providing a vehicle. That means in this case, this is the B is relevant for the vehicle and C is relevant for the fuel. So if we receive fuel, then again that condition is applicable. If that employer's name is given under that the circular issued by the government, saying that this position is entitled for the fuel allowance, then that person's fuel allowance, liable part of the fuel allowance is 25% of the expenditure incurred by that employer. එතකොට employer අපිට fuel allowance එකක් කියලා දෙනවා නම් යම් ගාණක් ඒ දෙන එකෙන් 125යි tax කරන්නේ. If we receive allowance for a vehicle, then 25% of that amount can be considered. If we receive fuel allowance, 25% can be considered as our liable income for the income tax. And the next condition is this benefit is applicable only for a one vehicle. If a person has given more than one vehicle, this concession is applicable only for a vehicle. If we receive more than vehicle, market value should be considered for the purpose of ascertaining the employment income. Here, the aggregate of the cost incurred by employer or employers for vehicle and fuel of all additional vehicles shall be the value of benefit to be included. That means we have to include market value of all other vehicles to the as vehicle benefit. That means these concessions are applicable only to a one vehicle or a one vehicle, only for a one vehicle. ඒතර වාහන සමහරු ඉන්නවා එක වාහනයකට වඩා හම්බ වෙනවා. සමහරවිට primary employment එකෙනුත් වාහනයක් හම්බ වෙනවා, secondary employment එකෙනුත් හම්බ වෙනවා. හැබැයි වාහන කීපයක් හම්බුණත් this concessionary rates means under A. Under A means under this calculation or under this 25% calculation, this concession is applicable only for one vehicle. If we receive more than one vehicle, other vehicles, market value of other vehicles should be calculated, should be considered as our employment income. Item number G is for the motor bicycle. If an employee is received a motor bicycle, then we have to consider 5,000 per month, because if we receive a motor bicycle, not the vehicle, but the motorcycle, irrespective of the engine capacity. That means in earlier circular issued by the Department of Inland Revenue, we considered the engine capacity of the vehicle, not only in the case of that motor bicycle, but when we are calculating the vehicle benefit in the earlier circular, we had to consider engine capacity of that vehicle, but in this new circular, we do not have, it is not necessary to consider engine capacity of the vehicle. That is why we have given only one line. We consider only any vehicle. In the earlier circular, we considered engine capacity of the vehicle for the calculation of vehicle benefit. And if it is a motor vehicle, we have to consider 5,000 per month 5,000 is if we have given motorcycle with fuel, then we have to consider 5,000. If it is motorcycle only without fuel, then only 3,000 should be considered per month, irrespective of the engine capacity, as I have already explained. And there are some people, they use their motor vehicles for the vehicle for the field work. Then we have to consider 25 rupees per kilometer as their benefit, but it shall not be exceed 20,000 per month. But we have to consider 25 per kilometer. Rupees 25 per kilometer. Kilometer එකට රුපියල් 25 ගන්න අපි calculate කරලා ගන්නවා. But it shall not be exceed 20,000 per month. But that means the upper amount is 20,000 per month. For this purpose, they should keep records for the calculation of the kilometers they have already used. So, මොකද අපිට මේ කිලෝමීටර් ගාන දැනගන්න නම් හරියට රෙකෝඩ්ස් මේන්ටේන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒතර මේ වගේ කන්සිස්ටන් එකක් අපි දෙන්නේ හරියට රෙකෝඩ්ස් මේන්ටේන් කරලා තියෙන අවස්ථාවකදී විතරයි. So if it is a motorcycle, then the value per kilometer is 5 rupees. If it is a motor vehicle, then 25 per kilometer. If it is a motorcycle, 5 rupees per kilometer. And the next condition is condition I. The next condition is where the employer incurs or reimburses an expense in respect of fuel or maintenance. That means here the employer incurs expenses, so he reimburses expenses for the fuel or maintenance in respect of fuel or maintenance. That means after incurring expenditure by the employee, he can submit invoices to the employer for the reimburses. Then the value we have to consider is actual expenditure. එතකොට reimburse කරනවා නම් එතකොට අපි actual expenditure එක තමයි consider කරන්න ඕනේ. If an amount is deducted from employee's salary for providing a vehicle, the employment benefit should be the benefit specified under 3A or B above, less the amount deducted from the employee's salary. This is similar to the housing benefit. When we are considering the housing benefit, if we deduct some part of the salary, we have to minus that amount as well under the vehicle benefit. Also, we have to remove that part. And we deduct that part. That part means the amount we collect from employee's salary. Okay, if you have questions, you can ask.
Ma'am, there's a special scenario that can employee have the used vehicle in his.
I think you have the answer. I have already explained this. Madam, if employer provide resident in rated area and end of the month, deducted 10% of his income, how to calculate? So I think the 10% of his income means 10% of his salary. I think your question, if I am not mistaken. So then what we have to do is we can deduct that amount from the benefit we have to consider. We have already considered the difference between that the amount we calculated based on this circular and the amount we collect from the salary is the benefit. හරි නේද මේකට උත්තරේ? මම හිතන්නේ මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ මේ අහන්නේ. Okay. Madam, if person have major repair of the vehicle, it will be considered. That means if it is a major repair, And if that part is done by the employer, then the answer is here. I have already explained that answer, where the employer incurs or reimburses any expense in respect of fuel or maintenance of any motor vehicle or motor bicycle owned by the employee. The value of the benefit to the employee is the actual expenditure, because that part should be done by the employee. If that is provided by the employer, that will be a benefit. If employee can acquire his vehicle to the book value when he retire, how can calculate it for book value or market value? Okay. I think in this circular, you have the answer. Where is it? You are asking the vehicle. Vehicle. If employee can acquire his vehicle to the book value, when he retire, how can calculate it for book value or market value? Normally, we have to consider market value. Uh, I think you have seen in the circular, in each and everywhere, we consider the market value, not the book value. Here, if cost of vehicle is not ascertainable for such additional vehicle, market value of the monthly operating lease for similar type of vehicle should be the value of such benefit. तर මෙතනින් අපි කියලා තියෙන්නේ අපිට ascertain කරගන්න බැරි වෙන හැම වෙලාවකදීම we have to consider market value. Sometimes for the calculation of that market value, we have to consider the leasing amount, operating lease value for similar type of vehicle. So we have to consider market value. අපි හැම වෙලාවකදීම market value එක තමයි ගන්නෙ. එතකොට market value එකට අපිට මේක consider කරන්න පුළුවන්. That is the benefit. Please read this circular very carefully, because you should apply this circular when you are calculating the employment income. So read this circular carefully, and we can discuss it in next week as well. ඔයගලන්ට ගැටලු තියෙනවා නම් next week එකේදීත් මේ ගැන කතා කරලා අහන්න. If we are doing this session in physical, very easy. මොකද අපිට physically lectures කරා නම් මේකට ප්‍රශ්න ගොඩයි උත්තර ගොඩයි ඒත් දැන් ටිකක් අපහසුයි. Therefore, if you have questions, you can ask. අපි මේකේ ගණන් ටිකක් හදමු. Then you can very easily understand the theory. The next one is, now I have explained about the housing benefit and vehicle benefit. The next one is quantification of the value of communication facilities provided by the employer. Communication facilities, mainly telephone facilities, if it is internet or any other thing. In that case, we consider only 25% of that allowance. So normally sometimes we receive allowance. Payment for communication facilities. Payment for communication facilities means we receive telephone allowance, not the reimbursement of telephone expenditure. This is the payment for communication facilities. Means when we are receiving telephone allowance from our employer, only 25% of that payment should be considered as our employment income, but it is applicable only for the government officials, because the circular is applicable only for the government officials. එතකොට අපේ government accountant කෙනෙක් මං හිතන්නේ අපේ මේකේ ඉන්නවා. එයා දැකලා තිය circular එක. In that circular, it has mentioned several positions. Only the positions provided under that circular are entitled for this concession. That means 25% concession is applicable only that kind of employees. For all other employees, total amount they receive as an allowance should be considered for the employment income. That not only the telecommunication, but the vehicle benefit and the fuel benefit. That means vehicle allowance and total vehicle allowance and total vehicle allowance, total fuel allowance and total telephone allowances should be considered for other employees who are not mentioned under the circular issued by the government. The next one is loans on concessionary interest rates. So normally loans are provided mainly by the banks and financial institutions. So this concession is mainly for them. Where an employer or any bank or financial institution has provided a loan to an employee. Sometimes they have provided a loan for concessionary interest rates. If they have given a concession loan for the concessionary interest rates, that is not taxable under this new circular. But as per the earlier circular, we calculated a specific mark and we tax that part. But in this new circular, that is not taxable. So we have mentioned it shall be zero. That means we do not consider that for the employment income. එතකොට දැන් අර loans දීලා තියෙනවනේ. banks වල මෙතන අපේ මේකේ කවුරු හරි ඉන්නෝ නම් banks වල වැඩ කරන අය ඒගොල්ලෝ දන්නවා ඇති හැම bank එකක්ම වගේ concessionary rates වලට එයාට loans දෙනවා. පරණ තියුණු circular එකේ හැටියට. That means up to 21-22 මේ පරණ rates තමයි තිබුණේ. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි මේක apply වෙන්නේ. එතකොට it is zero. That means we are not going to tax that benefit. That benefit means concessionary loan benefit is not taxable. The next one is payment of telephone bills of the employee. Telephone bills of the employee means reimbursement of the bill. That means where an employer pays telephone or telecommunication bills of the employee. That means that telephone, normally they have provided a telephone, so that telephones, they reimburse us, so they pay telephone charges. If the employer reimburses or pays the telephone charges, only 50% of that bill is considered as telephone benefit. එතකොට 50% එහෙම වෙලාවලදී අපි සලකන්නේ total reimbursement amount is not taxable, because we know that the normally we know that the telephone we use for the official purposes and for the private use. That is why we consider only 50% of the bill, because 50% is for the private purpose. We consider 50% as for the private purposes. Therefore, we tax it. We include it under employment benefit. The next one is other non-cash benefits provided by the employer. There may be a lot of other non-cash benefits. We have to consider market value. If the cost is not ascertainable, then market value of a similar kind of benefit shall be treated as the value of such benefit. Actually, earlier one of our students asked a question about the vehicle. Under this part, we can consider it. We can consider the cost if it is ascertainable. here it is a non-cash benefit. If the vehicle is a non-cash benefit, it is not by cash. It is a good, that is, it is a car. So if that employer can ascertain the cost under this category, he can consider the cost of that car. If it is ascertainable, if it is not ascertainable, then only we can consider the market value. අපේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් අහලා තිබුණා නේද? අපේ ස්ටුඩන්ට් කෙනෙක් කවුරු හරි කා එකක් දුන්නොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ කියලා. We can consider if employee can acquire his vehicle. Here means if employee can acquire his vehicle to the book value. When he acquire means if he pay money, that means he purchase it. If he purchase it, it is not a benefit. It is not a benefit because he pay cost. So it is not a benefit. එක cost, එක benefit එකක් වෙන මෙයාට නිකන් දුන්නා නම්, if the employer has given it free of charge, then it will be a benefit. If he purchase it, employee purchase it, then it is not a benefit. අපි සල්ලි දීලා මොකක් හරි ගත්තා නම් ඒක benefit එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. benefit එකක් වෙන්නේ අපිට නිකන් දෙනවා. අපි දැන් අපිට retire වෙනකොට අපිට vehicle එකක් නිකන් දුන්නොත්, under this category we can consider it. If the cost is ascertainable, then we can consider the cost. If the cost is not ascertainable, we can consider the market value. Market value of a similar kind of benefit. එතකොට ඒකයි අර කිව්වේ market value එක ගන්නකොට අපිට ඒ vehicle එකේ market value එක ගන්න බෑ. නමුත් ඒ જાතියේ භාණ්ඩයක වෙළඳපොලේ වටිනාකම එක්ක මොකක් හෝ ක්‍රමයකින් අපිට හරි ගැස්සලා ඒ ජාතිකක market value එක සලකලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ ගැන තව ගැටලුවක් නම් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ අහපු කවුරු හරි ස්ටුඩන්ට් ආයෙ අහන්න පුළුවන්. Okay, those are the income we have to consider when we are calculating the employment income. That means under Section 5, subsection 2, we have given the income that we have to include when we are calculating the employment income. ඔයගලන්ට තේරෙනවා ඇති අපි දැන් බලන්නේ employment income එක ගණනය කරනකොට මොනවාද ඇතුළත් කළ යුතු income කියලා තමයි අපි මෙච්චර වෙලා කතා කරේ. So each and every income we receive from our employer should be included under Section 5, subsection 2. Then we have another subsection, that is subsection 3. Section 5, subsection 3. This Section 5, subsection 3 is provided for the items that we have to exclude when we are calculating the employment income. එතකොට එකතු කරන්න ඕනේ විතරක් නෙවෙයි, අයින් කළ යුතු දේවල්. දැන් අපි මුලින්ම කරන්නේ ඔක්කොම ಜಾති එකතු කරගන්නවා. ඊට පස්සේ මේ එකතු කරගත් ඒවාලින් සමහර දේවල් අපි අයින් කරගෙන යනවා, මේවා අදාළ කරගන්න එපා කියලා. එතකොට ඒව තමයි අපි දැන් මේ කතා කරන්න යන්නේ. The first one is exempt amounts and final withholding payments. So we don't have final withholding payments for the employment income, but we have exempt amounts. So exempt amounts are provided under Schedule 3 of this Act. You can refer that Schedule 3. So that exempt amounts relevant to the employment income can be excluded under Section 5, subsection 3. So that is not taxable. තේරෙනවද ඔයගොල්ලන්ට? දැන් අපි මුලින්ම ඔක්කොම එකතු කරගන්නවා. ඊට පස්සේ tax වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා මේතන subsection 3 වලින් කියන ටික එකින් එකට අයින් කරලා දානවා. එතකොට ඒව තමයි දැන් මේ කරන්නේ. The next item we have to exclude is a discharge or reimbursement of expenses incurred by the individual on behalf of the employer. That means, I think you can remember, if an employer reimburses an expenditure incurred by the employee on behalf of him, that kind of income should be disregarded, should be excluded. මොකද ඒක අපිට එන benefit එකක් නෙවෙයි. අපි දරන්න ඕන අපේ වියදමක්, our personal expenditure. If our personal expenditure is reimbursed by the employer, then it will be a benefit to us. If it is not, if it is incurred by in respect of the employer, so if that kind of expenses are reimbursed by the employer, that is not a part of our employment income. That is not a benefit to us. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලෝ අපිට තේරෙන්න ඕන employer වෙනුවෙන් අපි වේදමත් දරලා employer එක reimburse කරොත් it is not a part of the employment income. Then the next one is a discharge or reimbursement. Discharge or reimbursement. Now you know the term reimbursement of the person's dental, medical or health insurance expenses. That means we can incur expenses for dental, medical or health insurance. And if that expenditure is reimbursed by the employer, it can be excluded only if that benefit is available to all full-time employees in the same grade of the service on equal terms. That means that benefit should be entitled for all employees in the same grade of the service. එතකොට එකම grade එකේ ඉන්න එකම service එකක ඔක්කොටම තියෙන සමානව හිමිකම ලැබෙන benefit එකක් නම් ඒක එහෙමනම් විතරයි මේව ඉවත් කරන්න පුළුවන්. If it is a specific benefit provided to very few employees or only 1 or 2 employees or specific category of employees, then this is not entitled. This is entitled only if this benefit is available to all full-time employees in the same grade. We have to consider the grade and the service, and that benefit should be applicable to all full-time employees on equal terms. එතකොට එක්කෙනෙක්ට එකක් තව කෙනෙක්ට තව එකක් එහෙම බෑ. හැමෝටම සමානව එක විදියට ලැබෙනවා නම් තමයි මෙතන exclusion එක හම්බ වෙන්නේ. So for this purpose, we have already issued a public ruling. After that, we have included the terms same grade and equal terms in the Amendment Act. We have inserted to the Principal Act by the Amendment Act number 10 of 2021. මොකද මේ equal terms කියන කතාවත් same grade කියන කතාවත් ඔයගොල්ලෝ ළඟ තියෙන Principal Act එකේ නම් if you are referring the Principal Act, you cannot find these two terms, that is same grade and equal terms, because we have included those terms from the Amendment Act. ඔයගොල්ලන්ට Amendment Act එකෙන් තමයි මේ terms දෙක බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. The next exclusion is payments made to owe benefits accruing to employees on a non-discriminatory basis. එතකොට එක්කෙනෙක්ට තියෙනවා තව කෙනෙකුට නෑ. එයාගේ තනතුර අනුව ඊට පස්සේ එයාගේ size එක අනුව එයාගේ type එක අනුව මේ වගේ දේවල් වලට අපි මේක discriminate කරලා තියෙනවා නම්, if that benefit is discriminated, then it is not applicable. If it is non-discriminatory basis, that by reason of their size, type and frequency are unreasonable or administratively impracticable for the employer to account for or to allocate to an individual. If that is not reasonable, if it is administratively impractical to calculate one's benefit, then we do not consider that benefit as a benefit of the employee. The example is group transport. If we have provided a group transport, it is administratively impractical to calculate or allocate to an individual because it uses lot of officers, lot of employees in the institution, So it is very difficult to allocate to an individual. And we have given T, we have given some benefits by the employer, but it is not practical. Sometimes it is not reasonable. Sometimes it is not material. Then we do not consider that kind of income as our employment income. එතකොට මම මේකයි කිව්වා සීසන් ටිකට් එකේ කතාව කිව්වම ඒවා මැටීරියල් නැති වෙන අවස්ථා තියෙනවා. එතකොට ඒ වගේ පොඩි පොඩි දේවල් වලදී අපිට වෙහිකල් බෙනිෆිට් එකක් දෙනකොට ලොකු ගාණක් දෙනවා. නමුත් අපිට පොඩි පොඩි ගණන් වලින් සමහරවිට මැටීරියල් නැති දේවල් අපිට නොසලකා හරින්න පුළුවන්. ඒක මැටීරියල් වගේ දෙයක් නම් ඒක රීසනබල් නෑ කියලා හිතෙනකොට අපිට ඒක නොගෙන ඉන්න පුළුවන්. Then the next one is the value of a right or option to acquire shares at the time granted to an employee under an employee share scheme. I have already explained this part. In this case, this is the option. At the time granted, option granted, at the time of granting this option, we do not consider for the employment benefit. But when we are allocating shares to that employee, then at that time we consider for the benefit. ඒ කියන්නේ option එක දෙනවා. අපිට කියනවා employer කියනවා මම ඔයාට මගේ shares වලින් මෙහෙම ප්‍රමාණයක් දෙනවා. That is the option. Right or option. But we are not allocated that shares. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට shares allocate කරලා නැහැ. option එකක් දෙනවා කියලා කියනවා විතරයි. At that time, we do not consider that amount for the benefit, but when we are allocating that one, ඒ කියන්නේ අපි මේක allocate අපිට වෙනකොට අපිට shares allocate වෙනකොට තමයි අපිට benefit එකක් එන්නේ. So the option එක granting option at the time of granting that option, we do not consider for the employment income. The next item we have to exclude is contributions made by an employer to an employee's account with a pension, provident, gratuity or saving fund approved by the Commissioner General. That means if a contributions made by an employer to an employee's account, that means this is not the this is not the payment made at the time of the retirement. This is the contribution made by the employer to an employee's account. ඒ කියන්නේ employer contribute කරනවා එයාගේ part එක. එයාගේ account එකට අපි pension ගන්නකොට දෙන එක නෙවෙයි, terminal benefits නෙවෙයි. අපෙන් මාසෙන් අපේ පඩියෙන් අපි allocate කරනවා වගේම the employer should contribute his portion. So if that portion is contributed to an account with the pension, provident to gratuity or savings fund that is approved by the Commissioner General, then that contribution is not taxable. ඔයගලන්ට මතක ඇති අපි කතා කරනකොට include කරන්න ඒව මොනවාද කියලා? මේ include කරන ඒවලදී අපි කිව්වා මේ වගේ දේවල් include කරන්න කියලා. Let me show you. Retirement contributions made to a retirement fund on behalf of the employee and retirement payments received in respect of the employment. That means retirement contributions made to a retirement fund is an amount that should be included. එතකොට retirement contribution එකක් කරනකොට employer on behalf of the employee, we have to include that amount as a benefit of our employment. But after that, what we have to do, if that retirement contribution is made to a fund, and if that fund is approved by the Commissioner General, only that situation we can exclude that amount. මම හිතන්නේ තේරුණාද දන්නේ? අපිට කියනවා retirement contribution එකක් කරන වෙලාවේදී employer ඒක include කරන්න කියනවා. හැබැයි මේ retirement contribution එක කරන fund එක, if that fund is approved by the Commissioner General, then we can exclude it. So what will happen to the balance? it is still it is remaining here. That means that is taxable. That means if that contribution is made to a retirement fund that is not approved by the Commissioner General, it is still here. So it is liable for the employment income. Only the retirement funds that are approved by the Commissioner General, the contributions made by the employer to that kind of fund, that is that amount can be excluded. The next one is any retirement payments. Here retirement contributions. Contribution is made by the employer and employee after taking that after payment after retiring. When retiring, we receive retirement payments. Any retirement payments received at the time of the retirement from employment, that means අපි pension ගන්නකොට අපිට ලැබෙන දේ. Subject to the conditions that the respective retirement contributions have already been considered for income tax purposes and the employee has paid tax on such contributions in a previous year of assessment. This is a new one. We have very recently included this part. In this case, we are talking about the retirement payments received at the time of retirement from employment. That means we received retirement payments and subject to the conditions that the respective retirement contributions have already been considered. That means under this part, we consider the funds approved by the Commissioner General. So I told you that there is a balance amount that is not approved by the Commissioner General. Still that part is here. Still that part is here. So we are going to remove that part from the new, under this new provision. එතකොට මෙතනින් කියලා තියෙන්නේ approve කරපු fund එකකින් නම් මේක සලකා retirement payments. So if that retirement payment is already considered for the if that retirement payment is already considered for the employment income tax, then we can exclude the retirement payment. අපි මොකද දැන් මං ಜಾති දෙකක් කිව්වා. කොමසාරි ජෙනරල් අප්‍රූව් කරපු එක මෙතනින් අයින් කරනවා. එතකොට අතන ඉතුරුනා කොමසාරි ජෙනරල් අප්‍රූව් කරපු නැති ටික. ඒතර මෙතනින් කියන කොමසාරි ජෙනරල් අප්‍රූව් කරපු නැති ටිකට එතනින් ඉන්කම් ටැක්ස් එක ගෙවුවා නම් කන්ට්‍රිබියුෂන් එකට ටැක්ස් එක ගෙවුවා නම් එහෙනම් ආයිත් ඒකට ටැක්ස් ගෙවන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. එහෙම වුණාම මොකද වෙන්නේ? එකම දෙයට එතනින් ටැක්ස් එක ගෙවනවා. නැවතත් පේමන්ට් එක කරනකොට ටැක්ස් ගෙවන්න වෙනවා. Therefore we have removed it. This provision also inserted from the Amendment Act. I think it is inserted from 2022 Amendment Act. This is an example for the employee share option plan. So, in this example, Mr. Vasanta serves as a manager at Savana Company Limited. As part of his remuneration package, he has been granted the option to acquire 1,000 shares of the company at a price of 500 per share in the year of assessment 23-24. So, he has been granted an option to acquire, not allotted, just granted the option, 100,000 shares at a price of 500. When this benefit was provided, the market value of these shares was 600,000. So 600,000 in year 24-25. Mr. Vasantha exercises his option to acquire the 1,000 shares by paying 500,000. That means 500 per share. So he purchased these 1,000 shares by paying 500,000. So market value of that shares was 600,000. He paid 500,000. At the time of allotment of these shares to Mr. Vasantha, their market value was estimated at 800,000. So, when the time of allotment, the estimated market value was 800,000. Subsequently, by the end of the fiscal year 24-25, Mr. Vasantha will sell the shares for 1,000, 1 million. 1 million. That means he purchased for 500,000. Then the market value was 800,000 at the time of allotment, and he sold for 1 million. Then what is the answer? The option granted in 23-24. 23-24, the option was granted. Is an employment benefit, but Mr. Vasantha need not include that value in computing his income from employment in terms of section 5(3)(e). That means we do not consider this benefit when they are granting the options, but we have to consider at the allotment, at the time of allotment. So, මේ වෙලාවේදී අපි මේක මේ 23-24 year of assessment එකට we do not consider this as a benefit. However, at the time of allotment of shares to Mr. Vasantha, the market value of shares, that is 800,000. Now, when the time of allotment of these shares, the market value is 800,000, reduced by the amount paid by Mr. Vasantha on an exercise of his option 500,000, and should be included in 24-25. When calculating the assessable income from employment. So, what is the amount? What is the amount he has to be included? What is the amount we have to include as his benefit? Who can tell me that the amount we have to consider for the employment income? What is the value we have to consider for the employment income?
Is it 800, madam?
කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන් කීයද කියලා? employment income එකට අපි එකතු කරන වටිනාකම කීයද? For the year of assessment 24-25. We know the market value, that is 800,000, and he purchased that shares by incurring only 500,000. So in the difference between 800,000 and 500,000 is the benefit of employment income, that is 300,000. එතකොට අපි සලකන්නේ benefit එක විදියට ඒ allot කරන වෙලාවේදී යට එන benefit එක. කියන්නේ ලක්ෂ 8ක් වටින shares එයාට ලක්ෂ 5කට දෙන්නේ. That is the share option. So the difference between 800,000 and 500,000 is the benefit for the benefit of the employment income. In addition to that, he sold his shares. He sold his 1 million shares. So the market value of the shares is 800,000, even though he purchased that shares for 500,000. The market value of the shares is 800,000. So the difference between 800,000 and the 1 million, that is 200,000, that is the capital gain. Capital gain. That part should be considered under investment income. So we have three sources: employment income source, business income source, and investment income source. The difference between and the gain of selling that shares, that is the difference between 1 million and 800,000, that 200,000 is a benefit, that is capital gain. We have to consider it under investment income. It is not, that income should not be considered under investment employment income. මොකද ඒක employment income එකේ part එකක් නෙවෙයි. shares ගැනීම විතරයි යාගේ employment income එක වෙන්නේ. The capital gain part is not a part of the employment income, but it is a part of the investment income. Okay. Now I have already explained the amounts that we have to exclude when we are calculating the employment income. Under that, I have mentioned exempt amounts. So in the next slide, we are going to discuss about the exempt amounts in relation to the employment income. So exempt amounts are provided under excluded items. So we have to exclude when we are calculating the employment income. That is given under this slide. If you need, you can take a small break. That is only 10 minutes break. After that, we can start again. About the exempt amounts in relation to the employment income. So what are the exempt amounts? Exempt amounts are compensation or gratuity paid in lieu of personal injuries or death. That means if we have a personal injury and if we receive compensation or for death of another person's, if we receive compensation, so that kind of compensations are exempt from employment income. So when we are calculating the employment income, if we have received that kind of income, we have to exclude that income. The next one is pension received from the Sri Lankan government or from a department of the government. That means only the government pension is exempt from income tax. They can then රජයේ රැකියාවක් කරන කෙනෙක්ට government exempt pension එක is tax exempt. The next one is amounts paid on retirement from any provident fund approved by the Commissioner General of Inland Revenue. That means if we receive provident fund when we are retiring, and if that provident fund is approved by the Commissioner General, then only that is exempt. If we receive any provident fund which is not approved by the Commissioner General, that is not exempt, so it is liable for income tax. The next one is amounts paid on retirement from any pension fund or the employees trust fund. That means ETF. So if we receive investment income from employees trust fund, that means interest income. If we receive interest income for the ETF, that means for the ETF, ETF and EPF, we receive interest income. That is part of the employees trust fund. So that interest income is exempt from income tax. So that means ETF payment is not exempt. Only the interest amount earned from representing employees trust fund, that is exempt. The next one is income derived by an individual entitled to privileges under the diplomatic immunities law and other specified conventions. ඒ කියන්නේ අර තානාපති කාර්යාලවල වගේ ඒවා. So that kind of person, if an employee, an individual received an employment income, that employment income received by an individual entitled to privileges under diplomatic immunities law, then the income received by that individual is exempt from income tax. ඊට පස්සේ benefits derived by a government employee from a road vehicle permit granted to such employee. That means vehicle permit is exempt from income tax. So these are the items that are exempt from income tax. Income tax means employment income. If we receive this kind of income, those are exempt from income tax. So the next, those are exempt from income tax. In additional to that, we have another exemption that is introduced under Inland Revenue Act Amendment Act number 10 of 2021. That is the gains and profits earned or derived by any person from any service rendered in or outside Sri Lanka. That means we can serve to any person who are in outside Sri Lanka, but service can be rendered in Sri Lanka or outside Sri Lanka. But the service recipient should be in another country other than Sri Lanka, and the service should be utilized by that other person outside Sri Lanka. There is another condition, that is the payment for that service should be received in foreign currency through a bank. If we receive foreign currency through a bank for the services rendered in or outside Sri Lanka, and if that service is utilized by a person outside Sri Lanka, then that kind of income is exempt from income tax on or after 1st of January 2020. So this is also a new insertion from the Inland Revenue Amendment Act number 10 of 2021. For an example, Mr. Nilantha Kumara, he is worked as a software developer. He is a software developer for a Singapore company. He provided his services online. That means he's staying in Sri Lanka. That means in Sri Lanka. He's staying in Sri Lanka and earn employment income from Singapore company by staying in Sri Lanka. He's staying in Sri Lanka. He provides service to a Singapore company. That means outside Sri Lanka. His remuneration remitted to his bank account in Sri Lanka in foreign currency. All conditions are fulfilled. Therefore, this employment income of Mr. Nilantha Kumara is exempt from income tax. මේක පැහැදිලි ඇති කියලා මම හිතනවා. So this exemption is provided to encourage foreign currency. So if we receive foreign currency for the service, then that is exempt from income tax. Now I have explained all the income that we have to include when we are calculating the employment income, and all the income that we have to exclude or exempt when we are calculating the employment income. So not only the cash benefit, but non-cash benefit as well we have to include for the calculation of employment income. Okay. If you have questions, you can ask now. අද කට්ටියම නිශ්ශබ්දයි. ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. No issue? No questions? All are clear? Okay. If so, we can move to the next slide. So these are the rules applicable for the employment income related provisions, other important provisions. Then one of the main provisions is deductions. So deductions are not applicable for the calculation of employment income. That means all income we receive in respect of the employment should be included for the calculation of employment income. We cannot deduct any expenditure. Any expenditure means for the traveling, for clothing, for other, for food, we incur a lot of expenditure, but we cannot deduct even a rupee for the calculation of employment income. It has given under section 10(1)(a), that provision is provided under section 10(1)(a). After considering the other two sources, that is business income and investment income, we can move to the deduction rules. So under that deduction rule, I will explain this again. Then the accounting basis. Accounting basis is cash basis. Cash basis means the amount the time of the payment received, the applicable law for that period is relevant for the employment income. That means if we receive salary during this month, this year of assessment, the amount we receive during this year of assessment should be considered as a employment income. If we receive bonus in respect of the previous year during this year of assessment, even though that bonus is entitled for the previous period, we consider it for the period we received that bonus for the taxation purpose. And the individual shall account for income tax purposes on a cash basis. Cash basis means we have to receive that amount during this period. If we receive that amount during in this period, we have to tax it during this period. For an example, Mr. Silva is an employee of ABC company. The company paid bonus of rupees 500,000 in December 2021 out of the profit earned for the year of assessment 2021. 2021 means 20 April to 21 March. But he received this bonus in December 2021. That means during the year of assessment 21-22. Even though that is applicable for the 2021 year of assessment, since that Mr. Silva received that 500,000 bonus in the year 21-22, we have to calculate that amount for the year of assessment 21-22, not for the 2021 year of assessment. when the employee when the employer deducting APIT from his employment, since he received that for the December 2021 period, the employer should deduct APIT when making the payment in the month of December 2021. Hari. Other rules are applicable for the employment income is, this is the source rule. So payments received in respect of the employment, payments received in respect of the employment shall have a source in Sri Lanka. අපිට payment එකක් කරනවා, payment එකක් ලැබෙනවා නම් employment එකක් සම්බන්ධයෙන්. So we consider the source in Sri Lanka to the extent derived in respect of employment in Sri Lanka. That means if he provided service within Sri Lanka, ලංකාවේ ඉඳගෙන service එක දෙනවා නම්, so the source is in Sri Lanka. If paid by on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka, wherever the employment is. And the next one is, if that payment salary is paid by the government of Sri Lanka, then of course the payment source is in Sri Lanka. We have three rules. One is, if the employment is derived in Sri Lanka, wherever the pay. ඒ කියන්නේ සිංගප්පූවේ ඉඳලා පඩි ගෙවනවා, හැබැයි සර්විස් එක දෙන්නේ ලංකාවේ ඉඳලා නම් ඒකට අදාළව ලංකාවට තමයි ඒ එම්ප්ලොයිමන්ට් එක තියෙන්නේ. ලංකාවේ ඉන්න රජයක් විසින් ලෝකයේ කොහේ තැනකදී එම්ප්ලොයිමන්ට් එක කරත් ලංකාවෙන් පඩිය දෙනවා නම් ඒ එම්ප්ලොයිමන්ට් එකක් තියෙන්නේ ලංකාවේ. To the extent derived from a company resident at. That means payment is made by a resident company and conducting the business in Sri Lanka. Resident and conducting business in Sri Lanka, then the source is in Sri Lanka. Then two conditions are there for the employment income, that is primary employment and the secondary employment. So what is the meaning of primary employment and what is the meaning of secondary employment? Primary employment means for a person, for an individual, he may have more than one employment. If there is a person who has one employment, one permanent employment in one company, and he may be a director in other 2 or 3 or several companies. So he may receive director fee and he may receive salary from his permanent company, permanent office. So all income, all salaries and director fees are received in respect of the employment. So all are employment income. But the person, individual can decide one employment as his primary employment. If he has more than one employment, then he can select one employment as his primary employment. And he should provide primary employment declaration to the employer. Then the employer knows that he is an employment in here, and this is the primary employment. මේක තේරෙනවද? දැන් කී දෙනෙක් primary employment declaration තමන්ගේ ආයතන වලට දීලා තියෙනවද? All employee should do this. All should do this, and this is mandatory. So if we have more than one employment, we have to select one employment as our primary employment, and we have to furnish a declaration to our employer nominating the employment as his primary employment. If he has more than one employment, after selecting one employment as a primary employment, all other employments are secondary employments. So he has to give secondary employment declarations to other employers. Okay. If you have questions, now you can ask. I have 2 questions. Madam, how can I identify tuition sales income? Is it business income? Yes. It depends. If that tuition, sir, is attached to an institution, then that person can be an employee of that institution. It depends on the agreement entered into with that institution. If he is the owner of that institution, then it will be a business income. Okay, what else? හරි මොනවද ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන්නේ අහන්න. අපි මේ ඒ දේ තේරුම් ගන්නේ employment ද business ද කියන එකත් එක්ක. මම ඔයගලන්ට කිව්වේ employment එකයි business එකයි වෙන් කරලා හඳුනා ගන්න නම් අපි කොහොමද බලන්න ඕනේ කියලා. I think I have explained employee relationship එකක්ද business relationship එකක්ද තියෙන්නේ. Service agreement එකක්ද තියෙන්නේ employment agreement එකක්ද තියෙන්නේ. Position එකක් provide කරලා තියෙනවාද නැද්ද? If he is working in an institution and if they have given an appointment saying that you are an employee of this division, this department, or I appoint you as a lecturer කියලා එහෙම දෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. දුන්නේ නැති වුණත් එයා එතන ගිහිලා permanent රස්සාව කරලා එයාට වෙනම salary එකක් දෙනවා නම් then he will be an employee. If he is conducting that institution, සමහරවිට එයාටම කරන්න පුළුවන්. එයාගේ institution එකක් දාලා එයාට කරන්න පුළුවන්. තනියම ගෙවල් වලට ගිහිල්ලා tuition දීලා එන්න පුළුවන්. If he is a freelancer, then ඒ වගේ වෙලාවල් වලදී he will be a businessman. දැන් ගෙවල් වලට ඇවිල්ලා tuition දෙන ගුරුවරු ගත්තොත් ඒ tuition ගුරුවරයා කරන්නේ business එකක්. business income එකක් එයා ලබන්නේ. එයා service income එකක්. service එකක් එයා දෙන්නේ. භාණ්ඩ විකුණන්නේ නැහනේ. Therefore he is providing service, education service, and he receive business income. We have to categorize his income under business income. If it is an employment income, expenses, deduction of expenses are not allowable. If it is an business income, he deduct relevant expenditure, not any expenditure, but the expenditure incurred for the production of income. That means if he provide tutorial, he can provide tutorials or other benefits. And if he has an institution, he can deduct depreciation for his furniture because there are a lot of desks, a lot of chairs, and other equipment. So he can deduct capital allowances. He can if he has another employees in that institution, he can deduct salaries and wages, electricity charges, telephone charges, and other online payment charges. He can deduct all expenditure incurred for the production of his business income if it is only a business income. But if it is an employment income, he cannot deduct any expenditure. Total income he received as a lecturer, total amount should be taxable. A lot of tuition income cannot identify for tax because they are hiding. So any way to catch them? Yes, we have lot of ways. Actually, we can visit their places. We can check number of students in that institution, number of halls, number of using a lot of lot of thing you මොනා හරි දේවල් හොයා වලින් අපිට හොයා ගන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට ඒ වගේ අපිට තැනකට ගිහිල්ලා ඒ තැන තියෙන documents check කරන්න පුළුවන්. We have power to check all the documents available in that institution. We can check registers. We can check anything. The Commissioner General has power to do anything. He has power to collect any document, any computer, any device in the institution. So we can check, we can examine, we can scrutinize, we can do anything to check, to find out the hidden income. හරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න පුළුවන් මම ඔයගලන්ට අන්මියුට් වෙන්න පුළුවන් නේද මම නෙවෙයි නේද ඔයගලව මියුට් කරලා තියෙන්නේ ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න අපිට අලුතෙන් එකක් පටන් ගන්න එකේ තේරුමක් නැහැ. ඒ නිසා අපිට මෙතන ප්‍රශ්න මොනවාද තියෙනවා නම් කතා කරමු. Why profit-making universities are registered under Guarantee Limited, which are tax exempted? Who told you that it is tax exempted? Just for knowledge. Universities are exempted. Universities are exempted, not the Guarantee Limited are not exempted, but the universities, it says like this. Under Schedule 3, exemption is provided like this. Any government-assisted private school, no, any university which is established or deemed to be established under the Universities Act number 16 of 1978 or the Buddhist and Pali University of Sri Lanka Act number 74 of 1981. That kind of universities are tax exempted. Other universities registered under Companies Act are not exempted. So only the universities registered under Universities Act are exempt. So Guarantee Limited universities are not exempted. Yes, Takshila Vidushani. Yes, you can ask question. මොන හරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න අපිට අලුත් පාඩමකට අද යන්න තීරමක් නෑ තව පොඩි වෙලාවයි තියෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මොකක් හරි තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් පොඩ්ඩක් ස්ලයිඩ් එකක් දෙකක් තමයි කතා කරන්න වෙන්නේ.
මැඩම් මැඩම් ටැක්ස් ෆයිල් එකක් ඕපන් කරලා ගෙදරට කාට හරි ටැක්ස් ඇසස්මන්ට් එකක්
ප්‍රශ්න
ෆයිල්
නැද්ද?
එකක්
අපි නැත් එහෙනම් අනිත් අලුත් පාඩමට ටිකකට යමුද? ඕ කාටවත් ප්‍රශ්න නැද්ද?
හෙලෝ
APIT. So what is the meaning of APIT? Who can tell me? What is the meaning of APIT? APIT means Advanced Personal Income Tax. Is it a separate tax? Who can tell me? What is Advanced Personal Income Tax? Is it a tax? ඔව් උත්තර නැත්නම් කොහොමද කාගෙන්වත්? Is it a tax? Yes or no? Is it a separate tax like income tax, value-added tax, social security contribution levy? Is it a tax? What is it? Yes. 1, 2. It is a separate tax. Advanced personal tax is a separate tax. Yes. 3 yeses. Who else? Do you think that it is a separate tax? That means we have income tax, then advanced personal income tax, then value-added tax. Do you think that it is a separate tax? Yes, 3ක් තියෙනවා. No. No. This is income tax. Madhava. No. No. Charuni. No. Again, no. Then what is it? If it is no, then what is it? Same income tax. If it is same income tax, why do we use this word? Advanced personal income tax? Why do we use another name for it? What is the reason? Advanced personal income tax is, it is not a separate tax. It is a method of payment of income tax. Actually, advanced personal income tax is not a separate tax. It is a method of paying income tax. One of the methods of paying income tax. One more answer. Because from section 5 cannot identify same income tax. Because from section 5 cannot identify. No, it is not the reason actually. This is because advanced personal income tax is a tax collected in respect of the employment income. So employment income is a part of the income tax. As I have mentioned earlier, employment income, business income, investment income, and other income all together we can consider the income all together is a part of the income tax. That means we calculate income tax using employment income, business income, investment income, and other income. So advanced personal income tax means a tax collection, one of the tax collection methods. That means we can collect taxes very easily through withholding tax. Withholding tax means collecting taxes when making someone some payments. If I am making a payment to somebody, I can deduct taxes in respect of that payment on behalf of the person who received that income. So, advanced personal tax means a method of payment of income tax by the employee. That means when we are making, if I am a company, when I am making salaries, when I am making payments to my employees, what I have to do? I have to deduct advanced personal income tax from that salary. That deducted amount is owned by the employee. It is not my tax. I am doing it on behalf of the government. After deducting that amount from the salary, that amount should be paid to the Department of Inland Revenue. When that employee calculating his liable income tax, after calculating the payable income tax, before making the payment to the government, he can deduct that advanced personal income taxes deducted by the company on behalf of him when they are making salary payments to him. So it is a tax credit. It is a kind of tax credit. So he can deduct that tax credit when he is making the payment. So after that, if that person has a balance payment, that balance payment should be paid by that employee. Then තේරෙනවද හැම දිනාටම අපි employment income එකට ආදාර. ඒ කියන්නේ advanced personal income tax and APIT කියලා කියන්නේ tax එකක් නෙවෙයි. It is not a separate tax like income tax, value added tax like that. එතකොට ඒක income tax එක එකතු කරගන්න එක විදිහක්. income tax එක calculate කරාට විතරක් බෑනේ. income tax එක අපි calculate කරනවා. calculate කළා income tax එක department එකට ගෙවන්න ඕන. එතකොට අපි calculate කරලා අපේ income tax එක අපි department එකට ගෙවනවා වගේම tax එක කරගන්න තියෙන තවත් ඊටාම පහසු ක්‍රමයක් තමයි withholding tax කියන්නේ. So withholding tax and advanced personal income tax, all taxes are similar to withholding tax. Withholding tax, advanced personal income tax, advanced income tax, all are similar tax collection methods. එතකොට withholding tax එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ අපිට කවුරු හරි payment එකක් කරනකොට අපි කරන payment එක තවත් කෙනෙකුගේ income එකක් වෙනවා. මම පඩිය ගෙවුවොත් මගේ employee ගේ employment income එක වෙනවා ඒක. එතකොට මම පඩිය ගෙවනකොට තව කෙනෙකුගේ employment income එකක් නම් මම පඩිය ගෙවනකොට එයාට ගෙවන පඩියට අදාළ income tax එක මම එයාගෙන් අඩු කරනවා. That is advanced personal income tax. After deducting, that deducted tax should be paid to the Department of Inland Revenue. එතකොට මම ඒක ගෙවන්නේ කම්පැනි එකට අවශ්‍යතාවකට කම්පැනි එකට තමයි ඔබ්ලිගේෂන් එක තියෙන්නේ. කම්පැනි එක විදියට ඒක ගෙවන්නේ ඒක ලබන කෙනා, ඒ කියන්නේ පඩිය ලබන කෙනා වෙනුවෙන් මං කරන්නේ. එතකොට පඩිය ලබන කෙනා කරන්න ඕනේ පඩිය ලැබුණාට පස්සේ පඩියට අදාළව එම්ප්ලොයිමන්ට් ඉන්කම් එක විදිහට ඔක්කොම ආදායම එකතු කරලා ටැක්ස් එක ගණනය කරලා ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් ගෙවන එකනේ. අන්නේ ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් එකට තමන් ගණනය කරලා ගෙවන එක එම්ප්ලොයී ගණනය කරන්න කලින් employer ගණනය කරලා අඩු කරලා ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් එකට ගෙවනවා. That is called advanced personal income tax. ඒක තමයි බදු එකතු කරගන්න තියෙන ඉතාමත්ම පහසුම ලාභදායීම ලෝකයේ හැම රටක්ම පිළිගත්ත ඉතාමත්ම පහසු ඉක්මන් නිවැරදි ක්‍රමය. Imagine if we receive employment income. If no one deduct advanced personal income tax from our salary, what do you think? Do you think that we are making the payment to the department as an employee? ඔගොල්ලෝ නිකන් හිතන්නකෝ. අපිට කැපුවේ නැත්නම් අපේ employer අපේ අතට employment income එක හම්බ වෙනවා 100%. That means gross salary will be received. අපිට මුළු ගානම ලැබුණාට පස්සේ අපි කීයෙන් කී දෙනෙක් අපිට ලැබෙන tax එක department එකට ගෙවයිද? අපිට ආදායම ලැබිලා අපි tax එක calculate කරලා return එකක් පුරවලා once a year we have to submit to the department a return, and 4 times we have to make for 4 quarters we have to make quarterly payments, and we have another payment that is final payment. So 5 times we have to make the payment. එහෙම නොකර employer අපිට පඩි දෙනකොට අපෙන් මෙයා ඒ ගාන කපලා දුන්නොත් හැම මාසෙකම අපේ පඩියට අදාළ income tax එක අපි වෙනුවෙන් අපේ employer කපලා department එකට ගෙවනවා. So that is called advanced personal income tax. Okay. Now you can ask questions. මෙතන කවුරු හරි ඉන්නවද අපේ ස්ටුඩන්ට් කෙනෙක් කවුරු හරි ඉන්නවද මේ සැලරිස් මේ වගේ අපිට කැල්කියුලේට් කරන අය ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් වල තමන්ගේ ඕගනයිසේෂන් එකේ කම්පැනි එකේ රජයේ ආයතනවල කවුරු හරි මේකේ ඉන්නවද ස්ටුඩන්ට්ලා වැඩ කරන අය රස්සාවල් කරන අය මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් if company hide edit no APIT, how can cross check, madam? Oh, it is very easy. It is very easy. Now we are doing that analysis. We can do it. We can cross check it. We can do it. But now we are doing that. No one can hide their income. It is very shorter period you can hide, but in long run, long term, we can check it and we can issue additional assessments to them. කොහොමද මේක කරන්නේ? If company high debit, how can cross-check? Company high debit means company has responsibility. It is a mandatory deduction. Company should do that. Company should deduct when they are making salaries or when they are making other payments to their company, their employees. It is an obligation to an employer to deduct APIT. If they are not doing this, there are a lot of penal provisions. හරියට කැපුවේ නැත්නම් ඒකට penal provisions තියෙනවා. If they have not deducted APIT when they are making the payments, the total payment amount can be disallowed. අපිට මේක අහු වුණොත් කම්පැනි එකක් තමන්ගේ ගෙවන මුළු ගානටම අදාළව APIT කැපුවේ නැහැ කියලා, that total payment will be disallowed. එතකොට කම්පැනි එකක් මේ දේ කරන්නේ කවුරු වෙනුවෙන්ද? එම්ප්ලොයිස්ලා වෙනුවෙන්. But who will punish? The company. We can disallow if we found that they have not deducted the relevant APIT part from the payments when they are making. The total expenditure will be disallowed. Total expenditure will be disallowed කියන්නේ salary එක 100% ගෙවලා තිබුණා. salary එක ගෙවලා තිබුණොත් APIT කපන්න නැතුව total salary එකම disallow කරනවා. එතකොට කාටද පාඩුව? කම්පැනි එකකට නම් වියදම අඩු කරලා තමයි යාගේ ආදායම. His profit is taxable. So when they are calculating their profit, they can deduct their total expenditure. So if we are disallowing their expenditure, that means total income will be liable for income tax. එතකොට ඒකෙන් punish වෙන්නේ company එක. එතකොට short term they can do it. පොඩි කාලයකට පුළුවන් කෙනෙකුට වැරදි විදිහට මේක කරන්න, but in the long run we can check and we can issue assessments. Is unit trust investment income liable for tax? Unit trust investment income, that means unit trust investment income means income received by us by investing in a unit trust. එහෙම වුණොත් ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට unit trust එකේ තියෙන income එක අපිට tax කරන්න ගියාම අපිට එතන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. අපිට tax කරගන්න අපහසු වෙන වෙලාවල් තියෙනවා unit trust එකෙන් අපිට හරියට ඒක allocate වෙලා ආවේ නැති වෙන අවස්ථාවල. නමුත් අපි ඒකට වැඩපිළිවෙලක් හදාගෙන යනවා. මේවා tax කරන්න සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපිට ලැබෙන සියලුම income අපි tax කරන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට මේ income එකත් අපි tax කරන්න ක්‍රමවේදයක් හදාගෙන යනවා. තක්ෂිලා විදුෂානි මොකක්ද අහන්න තියෙන්නේ? Okay. This is the provision for the deduction of APIT. That is section 83. Section 83 is relevant for the in the Principal Act we have section 83. In that section 83, in the marginal note it says withholding tax on employment income. That means prior to the introduction and prior to the change of the name as advanced personal income tax, the term we used was employment in withholding tax on employment income. So applicable provision was section 83. Under section 83, there are provisions for the employer to deduct employment income. deduct with withholding tax on employment income. At that time, we called it withholding tax. After that, in the Principal Act, it was withholding tax on employment income. That means from 2018 April 1st to 20th December 2019 December up to 2019 December 31st, it was withholding tax on employment. So applicable section was section 83. After that, from January 1st, 2020, the withholding tax on employment was abolished. So it was not in the system. Therefore, for that period, withholding tax was not deducted from the employment income. That means when making the payment to employees, that was not an obligation for the employer to deduct withholding tax on that employment income. But after that, after 20th April 1st, under new name, that was the withholding tax on employment income was reintroduced. The new name was advanced personal income tax. So after that introduction from January 1st, April 1st, 2020, the characteristics of that advanced personal income tax was a little bit changed. That means when it was withholding tax on employment income, it was a compulsory deduction, that there was an obligation to the employer for the deduction, and it was a compulsory deduction from the employment income. But after introduction of the advanced personal income tax, it was not a compulsory deduction. It was deductible when the employer granted their, if they have given their consent to deduct, only that kind of situation employer could deduct. That means it was, that system was there from April 1st, 2020 to from 2023 up to 2023 January. That means we had 3 types of advanced personal income tax and withholding tax on employment income. That means from the Principal Act it was a compulsory deduction, but in between the period from 20th April 1st to 23rd December 31st, it was not a compulsory deduction. If employer has given their consent to deduct, only with the consent of the employee, the employer deducted advanced personal income tax. Then law changed from January 1st of 2023. Then again, now the current situation it is now a compulsory deduction of the employer. So an employer shall deduct the advanced personal income tax. It is not may. The term is shall. Shall means kala yutui. An employer shall deduct the advanced personal income tax. එතකොට අර මම කියපෝ consent එක දෙන්න ඕන කාලේ මෙතන තිබුණේ මේ එයාට deduct කරන්නත් පුළුවන් if the employer gave their consent to deduct. එතකොට එහෙම පොඩි කාලයක් තිබුණා. ඔයගලන්ට මතකද දන්නේ? පටන් ගන්නකොටම මේක අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම deduct කරන්න උනා. අපි කතා කරා withholding tax on employment income කියලා. මේ කාලේ පොඩ්ඩක් මතක තියාගන්න. ඔයගලන්ගේ විභාගයට එන්නේ මෙන්න මේ දැන් මම මේකේ තියෙන ටික ස්ලයිඩ් එකේ තියෙන ටික. එතකොට දැන් තියෙන තාක්ෂණය අනුව it is a compulsory deduction. එතකොට the obligation of an employer to withhold tax under subsection 1. Then after renaming this withholding tax on employment income, the new section was introduced for renaming this withholding tax on employment income. The section is 83A. මොකද 83 තමයි තුන ඔයගලන්ට මම එදා කියලා දුන්නා කොහොමද ඇක්ට් එකක amendment එකක් ඉන්නේ කියලා. So section 83 was for the advance withholding tax on employment income, then reintroduced with the new name. The new name is advance personal income tax. The introduction of new name, for the introduction of new name, new section was introduced, that is section 83A. So Section 83A is applicable for the deduction of advance personal income tax. Now it is an obligation for an employer to deduct withholding tax, and it is not necessary to deduct withholding tax if the recipient is tax exempt. If the recipient is tax exempt, then only it is not an obligation to deduct tax. එතකොට ඒ අවස්ථාවේදී විතරයි මෙයාට මේක අඩු කරන්න බැරි වෙන්නේ. ලෙෝ එකකින් කියලා තියෙනවා නම් මෙයාගේ withholding tax මෙයාට income එක tax liable නෑ කියලා, then only it is not necessary to deduct withholding tax on employment, or advance personal tax deduction is not necessary. If it is not it is not required to deduct. Then, how the employer deduct withholding tax or advance personal income tax? How can he deduct? Can he apply all rates for the deduction of employee advance personal income tax from each and every employee in the institution? Make a practical. නිකන් හිතන්න අපි කොහොමද income tax එකක් ගෙවන්නේ? බදු ගෙවන්නේ කොහොමද? එතකොට හිතන්න employees ලා දහස් ගාණක් ඉන්න companies තියෙනවා. There are companies that are more than thousands of employees. So can the accountant or any financial officer do this calculation for each and every employee? Can they do? It is very, very difficult. So what we have done, we have introduced a special tax tables for the deduction of APIT from their employees. Actually, these tax tables are only for the employers, not for us, only for the employers, for the deduction of income tax from their employees. That means deduction of APIT, advance personal income tax, from their employees. So actually these tables are just a guideline for the employers. නිකන් හිතන්නකො ආයතනයක දහස් ගාණක් සේවකයෝ ඉන්නවා. මේ සේවකයින්ගේ income tax එක හදන්න ගියොත් එහෙම කපන්න ගියොත් එක එක්කෙනාගෙන් තනි තනියම කොච්චර අමාරුයිද කියලා. Because of that, the government introduced, the Department of Inland Revenue introduced special tax tables for the application of several types of employees, several situations of payments of employment income, and they have to use these tables when they are calculating their employees' APIT. එතකොට මේ table ගැන කතා කරලා තියෙන්නේ. මේ table එක මේ තියෙන you can follow this website. This is the Department of Inland Revenue website I have given in this schedule. So if you have this, if you can access to the department website, you can find this publications. Under this publication, we have provided APIT tables. If you are an employer, if you are engaging in calculation of APIT of the employees of your organization, you should use these APIT tables. So it is very easy for you to calculate applicable EPITs for each and every employee in your organization. It is very easy for you to calculate EPIT of your employees using this EPIT table. So you can find these EPIT tables from the publications category under Inland Revenue website. Here you have given tables. There are 7 tables. These are the tables. So for specific situations, we have given 7 tables. Based on the situation of the payment, we have to select relevant tax table for the deduction of EPIT. මෙතනින් එහාට ටික අපි next we can do from table 1 to there are 7 tables. From table 1 to table 7 we can discuss in the next means day after tomorrow, that means Friday. On Friday we can discuss this. It is very important if you can make printouts of this guideline. Mainly if you can go to this table, if you can go to this website, you can find out the EPIT tables. Under this EPIT table, there are some introduction parts. මේ තියෙන මෙන්න මේ table එකේ මේ කෑලි මේ table 1. How to apply table 1 කියන part එකට ගිහිල්ලා එතන print out එකක් ගන්න. But not the table 1. Table 1 is like a logbook. අපි ලඝු පොත් අපි ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙන පුංචි කාලේදී මෙන්න මේ වගේ. මෙහෙම එකක්. මේක පිටු ගොඩාක් තියෙනවා. It is not necessary to make a printout. Only this part, only this. How to apply table 1. How to apply table 2. How to apply table 3. How to apply table 4, table 5, table 6 and table 7. In each and every table you have provided the instructions. And each instruction part you have given examples. So you can read this and you can make a copy. Then we can do this exercise on next coming Friday. එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලෝ හැමෝටම පුළුවන් නම් මේක print out එක අරන් ළඟින් තියාගන්න. අපිට මේ calculation එක කරනකොට ලේසි. If you have time, you can do that exercises. There are a lot of examples. මේ examples ටික කරන්න. If you have thorough understanding about these tables, එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ pay කැපිච්ච විදිහ හරිද කියලා ඔයගොල්ලන්ටම බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. pay කැපෙන අය ගොඩක් ඇති. ඒ කැපෙන අයගේ කැපෙන pay amount එක හරියට කැපෙනවද කියලා බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. මෙන්න මේ tables ටික අරන් එන්න. On next Friday we can do that that part, that introductory part and the examples. We can do that some examples. I have provided some examples in the presentation slides as well, so we can do it on Friday. එතකොට මම කැමති මේවා අතේ තියෙනවා නම් අපිට එතකොට හරි ලේසි ඕගලන්ට මේ calculation එකත් එක්ක බලාගෙන මේ ටික කරන්න පුළුවන්. Okay, now it is time. Now it is 10, so we can stop the session now. We'll meet again on Friday. Okay. Okay, good night.
Good night, ma'am.
Good night, madam.
Night, madam. Thank you very
Right,
much.
madam.